Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Sandy Smith, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Warrant Officer Brendan Gardner. We welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
If you can do so, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record that they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Francis Walter Stevenson. Francis Stevenson was born in 1890 in Howard, Queensland. Known as Frank, he was one of 5 children born to Walter Stevenson, an engine driver, and his wife Charlotte. He received his education at Howard State School and was an active member of the town's Methodist Church and sporting communities. When the First War broke out in 1914, Frank was working as a clerk for the Mount Morgan Company. Frank Stevenson enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 13th of August, 1915. He was assigned to D Company of the 42nd Infantry Battalion, and during a short period of training in Australia, he was commissioned to second lieutenant. He was transferred to the 4th Reinforcements of the 52nd Battalion in April 1916 and continued training with them. On the 16th of August that year, Stevenson embarked for active service on board the troop ship Barara. The troops arrived in England on the 13th of October, disembarking in the town of Plymouth. Stevenson saw out the remainder of 1916 in camp there, before making his way to the Western Front, where he joined his unit in January 1917. German forces soon began their strategic withdrawal to the fortified Hindenburg Line. Allied forces eagerly followed this retreat, and were drawn into frequent clashes with the enemy as they did so. In April, Stevenson took in an attack on enemy positions at Nurui. Later that month, he was hospitalised with a skin infection and did not return to his unit until mid-May, by which time he had been promoted to lieutenant. The 52nd Battalion was moved to Belgium only a few weeks later. Here, Lieutenant Stevenson took part in his first major battle of the war when Allied forces attacked Messines Ridge, south of Ypres. The battle began in the early hours of the 7th of June 1917, when 19 mines laid beneath German lines were detonated. The explosion destroyed the enemy's front line, creating hundreds of massive craters and allowing the Allies to advance on their objectives almost unopposed. Private White, who also fought at Messines, described the attack. At 10 minutes to 3, we heard, felt and saw one of the largest explosions the world has ever seen. The earth simply rocked like a boat at sea when Messines Hill went up in earth, smoke and flames. Another minute and we were over the top. The heat was terrific, and we were following from within 50 yards of our barrage, and the heat from the bursting shells was like a furnace. We worked all day strengthening our position, shells screaming, bursting and tearing the earth all around us. Despite the overall success of the operation, which was consolidated over the next 7 days, Allied units suffered nearly 25,000 casualties. Of these, nearly 7,000 were Australian. Among the dead was Lieutenant Frank Stevenson. Following his death, his commanding officer wrote to Stevenson's parents, "We had a good deal of fighting during that time, and it is when the fighting is on that one can appreciate a man's true worth. I wanted to assure you of my sympathy and to let you know of the splendid officer that your son was. The fight at Messines was the best we were ever in, and for my part, although I got badly hit, I still think I would chance that if the same fight came over again rather than miss it." Today, Stevenson lies at Messines Ridge British Cemetery beneath the simple words selected by his parents. They read, "He died that we might live. Lieutenant Frank Stevenson was 27 years old. His name is listed on the honour roll on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph of his headstone down at the end of the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Francis Walter Stevenson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Thank you, sir. Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old as those who are left. Age will not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.